AfriKili family, Global PAC Nation, welcome to another edition of the Global PAC Show. This is your host, Tony Mfumu Simba. It is a pleasure to once again be here in front of you for this live edition of our show on this beautiful Monday, February 3rd, 2025. Well, we are in February, and if you're in the United States, you know that February happens to be Black History Month, a month in which we celebrate the accomplishment, the history of prominent Black figures throughout history. Well, it is a month about knowledge, and you know what they say about knowledge, right? They say knowledge is power. Well, if that is the case, what is the power of acquiring knowledge with regards to Black history in the month? Again, knowledge is power, so we hear. Also, how can the Global PAC, the Global Pan-African Community, gain enough power to advance our interests or the interests of all Black people around the world simply by mastering the history of Black people in the United States, in Africa, but also around the world? Well, that will be the center of our discussion today. So there you have it. Let's fasten our seatbelt, let's dive in, and let's get to work. So family, before we get started, let me start by thanking every single one of you who, since we began this new live broadcast about, three weeks ago now, you have continued supporting this concept, viewing, sending your comments, sending me text messages. I highly appreciate it. And for those of you that might be new to the AfriKili platform or the Global PAC platform, let me urge you to please subscribe to this channel. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, like, share, comment after the fact, so that your feedback can help grow this channel, but also we can all grow this platform. As I've been saying since we began this live format 3 weeks ago, I have no doubt that 2025 will be a year in which we will see this platform just take off and go into greater heights. But I can only do it with your support. And so I appreciate those that have supported, and I ask all others who have not done so, hit the subscribe button. Only takes 1 second. And remember to visit our website as well, which is www.afrikili.com for the written version of our blog, and enter your email address so that, as new edition of the blog are released, you can get them directly into your inbox, your mailbox. So there you have it. All right, folks, let's go straight into it. So Black History Month. Why don't we start just maybe taking a couple minutes, right? Just going and reviewing what this Black History Month concept is all about. All right, so essentially, as I said, this is a day that is designed, or a month rather, Black History Month, to celebrate the accomplishment, the achievement of African Americans, so Black people, throughout the history of the United States. Formally, this began being celebrated in 1976. However, the whole idea began way before 1976. As a matter of fact, about 50 years before, in 1926, this was the brainchild of a historian called Carter Woodson, who happens to be the second African-American person to obtain a PhD from Harvard University. The first one being W.E.B. Du Bois, Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois, who is another one of my many personal heroes, for all the fantastic work he did with bringing knowledge of Black people to the forefront, from advancing Black excellence and so on. But nevertheless, so Carter Woodson just came to the realization through his studies and so on that, well, wait a minute. How come, he kept coming across achievement of Black people, but those were not formally reported. There was no systematic, history curriculums and so on that purposely put to the forefront the accomplishment of Black people. So initially, what began as a frustration for him compelled him to do something about it. So what he began, so in 1926, this initially began as Negro History Week. So that was Carter Woodson's, he's a historian, by the way, Carter Woodson's idea of bringing the accomplishment of Black people to the forefront during that week, what he called Negro History Week. So this began as a week event. Today we have Black History Month, so it eventually evolved into a whole month, but it started as a week. So this again is also another indication, right, of just start by planting a seed. You just never know how your effort and how your desire to change might amplify or become magnified to an extent that you might not even anticipate. But it begins with planting a seed, right? You have to start if you want to see your effort grow into something. All right, so essentially, this is how Black history began. All right, again, started as Negro History Week. And if you go on social media or you look at many different posts, you will see that there's typically 4 colors associated with Black History Month. You will see there's typically the color black, red, yellow, and green. All right, so just a quick note on why those 4 colors are associated with Black History Month. This is actually a combination of 2 different flags. On one end, you have the Ethiopian flag. On the other side, you have the Pan-African flag. Both sets of these flags had 3 colors on them. And so Black History Month is a combination of those which make 4 colors. Because on one end, you had the Ethiopian flag, which did not have the black color. Okay, so it had the red, yellow, and green. All right, so red, yellow, and green. Those are the 3 colors on the Ethiopian flag. On the Pan-African flag, you did not have the yellow color. You had black, red, and green. And all these colors, by the way, mean something, okay? And I'm just going to talk about them very quickly. Anyhow, so the combination of those 2 flags brought to the forefront what today we have for Black History Month. So we have those four colors, as I mentioned, the black, red, yellow, and green. So what do these colors actually mean? So the black color represent the resilience, all right, of people whose existence was for so long not fully appreciated. So black skin, black color. So this color represent that resilience, despite the lack of appreciation, despite the oppression that Black people went through. They fought through it and they remain resilient. So that is what the black color represents, the resilience of Black people. So what does the red color represent? Well, it symbolizes, unfortunately, all the bloodshed of innocent Black people throughout history. So again, black resilience, red bloodshed, yellow, which remember was borrowed from the Ethiopian flag, which by the way, the Ethiopian flag had those 3 colors, red, green, and yellow, because it wanted to represent the rainbow. All right, it's different colors from the rainbow. But anyways, the yellow in this case symbolizes optimism, justice, and equality for everyone. And finally, the green color is a jump back to the motherland, to Africa. So the green color in Black History Month, that is celebrated in the United States, but now become kind of like a global celebration. Well, the green color is a reference back to the motherland, to Africa, because Africa has this rich greenery and natural resources. So there you have it. So when you see those 4 colors around Black History Month, if you did not know, hopefully now you know what they represent. And so that was just a quick history summary on what Black history is during the month of February, what this celebration is all about, how it started, and so on and so forth. All right, so now that we have discussed the history behind it, let's go into the relevancy of it, right? So, why should this matter today? All right, why should constantly going back into past history of Black people matter? You will see that often, that question and that sort of commentary. It's always about the past. Usually I hear about 4 different, I would say, point of view when it comes to this sort of historical emphasis. One, typically, people will tell you, listen, this is the 21st century. Why do black people always constantly want to bring up race, look at black history, go in the past? We should look forward, right? We live in this should be a colorblind society. So often you will hear that refrain when you're trying to celebrate Black History Month, for those who do not appreciate that. I also sometimes hear from people that are not black, and even other black people that are not African American, from other places, who tell, well, I mean, this history is about of African Americans in the United States. So what should all of us care if we're not African American? But I will address all of this. I'm just now stating some of the points that usually come up when you want to emphasize the importance of Black history and why we should celebrate it, and so on and so forth. A third statement I usually hear, which might be the most idiotic statement, would be, well, I mean, Black history doesn't matter anyways, because Black people have not contributed anything to civilization, have not contributed anything to the history of the world. So it's meaningless. So you might hear that. As I said, to me, that comment is a blatantly racist comment, really ignorant racist as well. And I will address it later. And so another one would be maybe related to the second one. It's about the Global PAC, the Global Pan-African Diaspora, the Global Pan-African communities. So, Black people around the world. Again, if we're wanting to create strong coalitions with all Black people, why should we just focus on the history in the United States? So typically, those are 4 objections or commentary, point of view that you might hear when you address, when you bring up Black History Month, why it is important. Okay, so let me address these 4 points of view. And before doing so, maybe let me just talk about the word history itself, because I think, spending just a couple minutes on the word history might bring to the forefront the importance of why the whole Black history concept matters. But obviously, Black history, there's history in that. So I want to bring your attention to that word history, right? So what is history? Because I think history is one of those words that often also can be balanced out there, and it tends to just be an amalgamation of everything, but then nobody really has precision of what history really is. So in a scientific approach, right, history is the study, the analysis, and the interpretation of past events, and also seeing how they relate to current event. So emphasis on those 3 things. You have the study, you have the analysis, and you have the interpretation. So the reason why history often can be bothersome is that it can be very subjective with regards to the interpretation. All right. Because when you talk about just looking at past events, typically, not always, but typically, people will agree on events. So this happened, so there's an event. And then people will start analyzing it, but the contradiction, the arguments and so on, usually will now come into the interpretation. In other words, understanding why did this happen and really trying to explain it. And that's where this becomes problematic. If you doubt that, I mean, if you want to cause a fight, just for example, ask people, okay, there was an American Civil War, right? Just ask people, what is the cause of Civil War? The Civil War in the United States? Was it slavery or not? Just ask that question. You will see how you will bring people will get into fights because of that, because people will interpret it differently. Some will tell you slavery was central. Others will tell you it was not about slavery, right? Or ask people, let's look at Africa, for example. You hear often about ancient Egyptians. Or ask people, were ancient Egyptians Black or not? You want to start a fight? That is one of those questions. Something more recently, we have Donald J. Trump in the White House, right? Well, just ask him or his supporters, did Donald Trump win the 2020 election or not? something that happened 5 years ago, and see the kind of contention that will come. So you see, again, facts, events will happen, but really the interpretation of those is typically what causes issues. And so in light of that, right, it is important to understand that there are so many omissions with regards to Black people also in the past, because the reality, also talking about history, if you want to analyze fact, first you need to have facts to analyze, right? Something that is written. Well, unfortunately, history is often written from the point of view of the victor. In this case, you have to consider that a lot of ancient history or history of the past was written by white people. In the case of, if you take slavery, you take a lot of ancient African history and so on. For the longest, history was written from the point of view of white people, so non-Black people, from the point of view of their, to advance the interest of white people. So as a result, there were many omissions when it comes to accomplishment of Black people. That's just a reality. Just the other day, I was, for example, just to give you another example here, reading, I think it was on History or CNN, I can't recall. They're talking about Edmond Dede, who is this opera composer in, I think it was in the 1800s in New Orleans, Louisiana. So he's somebody who was a prominent opera composer. He had written pieces, but nothing had been said about him throughout the books and throughout history. And he just came by because somebody discovered the transcripts at the Harvard University archives and then started researching. And it turns out this guy was a prominent opera composer, Edmond Dede. You look him up online. Dede is spelled D-E-D-E. All right. Just another example, right? So you have all this great accomplishment by Black people throughout history that were kept out of history books. So many omissions. You take the case of Africa. I did a video. It was in December 2021, I believe, or January 2022. That you'll find it on the AfriKili YouTube channel. That video was titled "Ibi sunt leones." Ibi sunt leones, which is a Latin phrase that means there be lions. So there be lions, referencing Africa. So, the time when people were creating maps of the world and so on, they saw Africa as this big void, which at that point they didn't have a lot of information about. So they just say, okay, ibi sunt leones, there be lions. And that was a common phrase used by map makers at the time and so on, just to reference places that they did not know, right? You'll hear that expression, terra incognito, so unknown land. But ibi sunt leones, so when they put that about Africa, it's like, that's just a land of savages, right? Nothing is happening. When in fact, there was real history being created. You also have to understand, is like everything. So history, it's interesting that history is events that have happened in the past, right? That are analyzed, interpreted, and so on. Well, guess what? The life that we're living today will become tomorrow. Our current life will become history, right? So whatever was unfolding in Africa and other parts of the world was history being created. But because it wasn't accounted by people who were writing, drawing the maps or writing formal history, well, a lot of that omission happened. And so that's why you start hearing, ridiculous questions as to what really have Black people contributed to the world and so on and so forth. But anyways, luckily, through anthropology, through the work of people like Carter Woodson, people like Sheikh Anta Diop in Africa, Theophilo Benga, you have so many historians that have worked diligently for the past 6 years and so to start bringing back the true history of Africans to the forefront. So really, that was my just quick parenthesis on the word history. History is important. Understand that history is written from the point of view of the victor. So as Black people understand that there's so many omissions with regards to the accomplishment of Black people, so it behooves us to continuously bring those accomplishments to the forefront, because the history of Black people is part of world history. And it is important for not only Black people, but humanity as a whole to have a better grasp of what the true accomplishment of all human beings were. And last time I checked, Black people are human beings. So clearly we need to bring to the forefront the history that was left out of many history books of Black people, so that we can educate our population, the global humanity, on the true history of our entire populations. All right, there you have it. Now, let's go back to those 4 points I mentioned initially, those omissions or comments, objections that usually come up when you want to talk about a focus on history. So remember, the first one was, people tell you this is the 21st century. We should be a colorblind society. So stop this emphasis on always looking in the past or trying to have demarcation and say this is Black history. What don't you just say it's world history? Well, I just laid a case here a few minutes ago about the many omissions. So I would say, you cannot sweep dust, right? Say you have your house and you say I have a clean house, but all you did is you swept all the dust and swept it under your rug, under your carpet, and then you say you have a clean house. No. You have all that dust that is under that rug. You're just hiding it, but you haven't really cleaned your house. The same would, let me use another analogy. You build a house and you build it on very weak foundations or faulty foundations. That house will start sinking and the house will eventually crumble. So this is akin to saying today, well, we need to go forward. Let's just forget stuff that happened in the past. No, we have a lot of dust that was swept under the rug. So all that need to be brought to the forefront. And people should not take the point of view of being defensive and so on. So I hear that a lot, especially here in the United States, as I'm seeing this new administration, for example, come in and go against all the DEI. Donald Trump, for example, has all these policies, anti-diversity policies, trying to attack all these DEI measures. Granted, DEI is not only limited to racial issues, but a big part is in there. But you'll hear arguments by people saying you don't need to focus about that. Or you have the case in Florida, in the state of Florida, where history books were being, rewritten and so on, wanting to leave out a lot of Black history, because people will tell you no, and people feel defensive, actually. And to me, that's a problem. Okay, so nobody is accusing current white people of being the reason of past horrors, but we can say that those past horrors did not happen, because when you refuse to teach past history to the current generation, you're hiding the truth. All right. So you're creating a reality that is based on faulty foundations. And so you cannot expect Black people to just align with that and know that there is a big void in the curriculum, in the current knowledge level, and just let it unattended. No, you cannot do that. We need to bring that to the forefront, and we need to be educated on the real history, right, of Black people, white people, the entire world. We don't do it when it comes to European history or white people history. Why should we do it when it comes to Black history? All right. So a quick parenthesis, as I was growing up, I remember during my whole secondary education, when I was in Europe, in the country of Belgium, I was very fond of history, and we would learn all sort of European history, Greek history, and so on. At a certain time, I was really knowledgeable. I could, bring up facts about Greek history and so on and so forth. Greek mythology was something I was a big fan of, but at no point did I know anything about African history. It was nowhere in the curriculums and so on. It is only later, as I became more interested in African knowledge, in Black people history, that I started uncovering so much. And ever since, I haven't looked back, right? I have continuously trying to educate myself. And that is important. As a matter of fact, we need to continuously educate ourselves. I will bring up the historian, the scientist, the genius, if you ask me, Sheikh Anta Diop from Senegal. He had this one phrase where he used to say, we need to arm ourselves with science and knowledge, because that is the only way we'll correct a lot of the injustices that Black people face. So we need to arm ourselves with knowledge, with science, so that we can repair the injustices that were committed. So my answer to those people who say, this should be a colorblind society and we should just look forward, I say, no. Yes, we all want to look forward, right? And we need to. But we cannot just, leave those injustices and those omissions unaddressed. We need to address them. So I would say it's similar to the Sankofa. There's a Sankofa principle, right? So Sankofa is a concept that was brought to the forefront by the Akan people in Ghana. Ghana, which is a country in West Africa. And today you also have like the Sankofa festival in the United States and across the world. But Sankofa, what does it stand for? It means it's symbolized by a bird, right? A bird who, you will see the bird walk forward, right? So that's the imagery. So you go forward, your legs are pointed forward, but your head looks backwards. So what is that paradox? Again, the Sankofa principle means you're walking forward, right? You're walking forward, but your head is shifted backwards. So it means that as you're advancing, you need to keep an eye on the past. Not that you want to get stuck on the past, but you need to know what happened in the past so that as you go forward, you avoid the mistakes of the past, you educate yourself on what happened. And that knowledge of the past will give you a better understanding, better maturity, better ability to make sound decisions today so that you might thrive and again, not repeat the mistakes of the past. That is why knowing or correcting the omissions of Black history is very important to building an equal, a just society going forward. Because you have no more excuse if you know what happened in the past and you repeat those same mistakes, that is a problem. At that point, you have no excuse. But today, seeing what is happening, with many of the education across the world and even in the United States, we still have a lack of knowledge that is detrimental. All right. So we need to continue bringing that to the forefront. Black History Month, as a matter of fact, if you ask me, we should not have a Black History Month. It should have been just a regular history all the time, not for 1 month, but education all the time. But we're not at that point, right? So this emphasis is needed so that we understand the omissions and we correct that. And hopefully one day we'll get to the point where we have just generalized curriculum wherever you are. So we don't have to emphasize Black history anymore because that becomes common knowledge, but we're not at that point yet. So this effort is still needed. All right. Okay. So the second point was, if you're not a Black American, so you're a Black person from Africa, the Caribbean, you're in Europe, you're in Asia, you're somewhere else, why should you be interested to know, Black History Month? That to me, it brings back the whole division, which is sometimes unfortunate. If you allow me to digress just for a second, there's the Emmy Award, right? The award Emmy, that's the musical award or the award that recognizes music accomplishment. There was a debate that I found interesting because in the Emmy, there's a category for African music. And in that category of African music, you didn't say African musicians, right? African music. Well, there was an African American who was included. His name is Chris Brown. So you had an African American artist, Chris Brown, included in the African music category in the Emmy Awards. And that created a bit of a debate. Some people started saying, okay, he is not African. Why should he be included in African music? And that debate was both on the African side and on the African American side. So the argument from the Amy folks was that, look, we're talking about African music. Just because you're not African doesn't mean you can't sing African music. And in the case of Chris Brown, he is very prominent in this style of music called the Afrobeat. He's done so many, songs with features from African musicians. Him himself has featured in music by African musicians. So in the Afrobeat world, Chris Brown actually has made an impact. So it is only normal that he will be included. But I say that to say that some of the divisions sometimes we need to be able to get beyond that. This whole idea in the Black world, okay, Black quote unquote, let me also just make a quick point. This is an argument I actually had with a friend not long ago about utilizing the word Black, saying, why should we say Black? We're actually not Black. I get it. Nobody's Black. You look at the color of my skin, I am certainly not Black. The top of this microphone is what we come to know as Black. You look at a white person is certainly not white. White would be like, you see this sheet of paper here? Now, that would be white. Now, imagine a white person walking next to this, and if you see a person who's as pale as this, I think you would turn around and run away in the other direction, thinking it's a ghost. We get it. Colors that we use to define different ethnic groups are not accurate. As a matter of fact, there's a book that I mentioned not long ago, Starry Messenger by Neil deGrasse Tyson. There's an interesting chapter on race talking about, actually, if you were to be diligent about the race colors, you would have a continuum, because just in the Black people category, we have so many different shades of Black that you would have so many different hues. But anyways, let's understand that when I utilize the word Black here, it's not, Black people should not, in my opinion, take it in a negative anyways. Those who have problems with it. Most people, I think, understand what it is. But for those who have a problem with utilizing the word Black, let me say that, yes, I get it, but I understand that those colors don't really represent who we are anyways, in terms of the true colors of our skin. But it is the word that is utilized to talk about Black people of African descent, right? Who have a darker skin. So be that as it may. So I was saying about, but within people of African descent, this division and separation that we sometimes have of saying, well, I'm Black, but I'm African American. You're Black, but you're from Africa. You're Black, but you're from the Caribbean. So we are different. We have nothing in common. So your history is your history. Our history is our history. That is so short-sighted. We share a common heritage, obviously, right? Coming from the same continent originally. But also a lot of the issues that we face are similar. It behooves us to work hand in hand, collaborate to elevate the condition of Black people around the world. So division is not needed. Collaboration and coalition is what will elevate the condition of Black people, be it in the United States of America, be it in the Caribbean, be it in Africa, Asia, Europe, you name it. So we need more collaboration. So the history of African Americans, so Black History Month, should absolutely matter to Black people in Africa and the Caribbean, just like the history of Black people or continental African should matter to African American and others. And then beyond that, remember when I started, I say it's human history, it's world history anyways. The history of African Americans, of continental African, should matter not only to Black people, but to white people, to Asian, to everybody, because it is part of world history. And so if you're interested in knowing how our world really evolved and getting a better understanding of our true history, it is important that history all matters, okay? All right, so that third point, which is the racist statement, remember of those 4 comments that I started with, the third one when people say, well, black people really have contributed nothing to civilization. Black people really don't have any history, any relevant history. So why even bother? So that comment is not only racist, but so ignorant. Personally, when I hear that statement, I have grown to the point where I even stop. It doesn't really do anything for me. I actually pity people who say statements such as those. Some people get revolted when they hear that because it's a pride thing and because they're black and they feel like they need to correct that. But listen, if you are putting everybody in one bucket, because when you say black people have not contributed anything to history, so you're putting essentially all black people in one bucket. That's the first mistake you're making, which nobody is a monolith. It's a very ignorant thing to do. Whenever you take any group of any ethnic group and you put everybody in one bucket and saying all these people are this characteristic of all these people did not do such a thing, that is clearly idiotic and ignorant. But then the second part is understand that societies and so on have evolved for hundreds of years everywhere, right? You as one person clearly have not experienced the reality of other places. So the only way you would know is by researching, by reading, and by knowing the history of other places. Only then can you really understand what other people have accomplished. And if you're somebody who actually took the time to read and research what other ethnic group have done, you would come to the understanding that obviously there is relevant history across the world. Whatever continent you look at, whatever ethnic group, there are there's a relevant history that has impacted our entire civilization today. Our current civilization is a continuation of many different civilizations throughout time. So when somebody tells you that all black people have not accomplished anything, don't have any relevant history, it is really a testament to your own ignorance, right? You're not really taking the time to research. I would understand if you frame that in a question and saying, oh, I would like to know what are the accomplishments of African Americans or black people throughout history. That is different, because that could be a genuine desire to learn. Then we can have a conversation. But if you just come with that ignorant statement, I really don't have any time for you, quite frankly. It's like, okay, that's what you think. You clearly are an idiot. You are ignorant, right? And so just move on. I will continue with educating those who want to be educated and discussing with those that actually have relevant things to say. So my response to people who make those statements is just ignoring that, because it is very dumb to have that point of view. Absolutely dumb. So, all right, lastly, we've been going on for 38 minutes here. The G-PAC, the Global PAC. This platform, the Global PAC, PAC, standing for Pan-African Community, Pan-African Coalition. But we also, when I say Global PAC, we are a PAC, right? I consider all black people around the world to be able to work within a PAC and work in unison towards attacking aggressively common goals. So within the Global PAC, this is also still very, very relevant, because one of the things we push forward within this platform is political participation, right? Because a lot of the inequality, a lot of even the omission from history books and so on are decisions that come from political figures. So we need political participation to solve a lot of the issues that black communities around the world are facing. Well, guess what? Having a sound understanding of history will help us in that mission, will help us know what we need to target in order to reform some of the injustices and inequalities. So when it comes to the mission of the Global PAC, which is to build coalitions, build strong coalitions, and build bridges across the global Pan-African communities so that we can improve the conditions change the narrative of all black people around the world? Well, it is important for us to have a sound understanding of history. Very, very critical. So I would say yes. African history, Black History Month, just like the history of Africa, of continental Africa, the history of black people in the Caribbean, the history of black people in Asia, in Europe, and so on, matters greatly. Matters greatly if we are to correct some of the injustices of the past and work towards creating a more equal future and a better future for black people, but not only for black people, for the entire humanity. So yes, it is very, very relevant to our cause. So there you have it. I will end up the show here today. We've been going on for quite a while. So let me end up on a positive note, as has become the tradition. If you are familiar with our concept, you know that I like ending with a quote, right? A quote that hopefully motivates us and inspires us to keep going forward. And so today, the quote I want to bring forward here is the quote from Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass, and so it is on the screen now. There you go. So this quote says, "I prayed for freedom for 20 years, but received no answer until I prayed with my legs." This is a bit fascinating to me and even a bit funny, because I say, I prayed for freedom for 20 years, but received no answer until I prayed with my legs. So what does that mean? I think this is a tremendous call to action. Faith is important. I'm not discounting that. But here's the deal. If you just wish for something without action, good luck. You will remain in the same condition without any change. If you really want change, you need action. And so here, when Frederick Douglass said he didn't receive any answer until he started praying with his legs, so once he started going is when he got to freedom. So this, I think, is very, very profound, brothers and sisters, AfriKili family, Global PAC Nation. This is very, very profound to our effort and what we are attempting to do here. Change is needed. Oh, God, no, that is the case. Nevertheless, we can complain all day, we can wish, but without action, it will not happen. And within the Global PAC platform, the call to action is to really unite within coalitions, build bridges across our Global PAC so that together we can have a more powerful voice in advocating for our issues, and we can elevate powerfully the condition of Black people across the world. That is the call to action for Global PAC. That is my call to action to all of you. Let's unite under strong coalitions, and together we can bring about positive change. All right, brothers and sisters, thank you very much for tuning in today. Before closing, let me remind you to please like this show, share it, subscribe to the channel. I really need your support to grow this platform. And as I'm closing, I'd like to remind you, we are beautiful people. We are special and strong people. Don't let anybody convince you otherwise. And more importantly, we are the Global PAC. So until next time, peace be with you. Asante sana, which means thank you very much in Swahili. Let's get to work, and remember, we are the Global PAC. Thank you.